there's one place that I think every place should start. And this has come as a shock because I'm an appliance guy. I've done this all my life. But I think you should start.
Do you want a kitchen that not only looks really great, but also works perfectly for you and your family? Well, if the answer is an obvious yes, then stick around because I've teamed up with Yale Appliance for this video to bring you 3 appliance tips that are essential in your kitchen and 3 design tips that will elevate your kitchen's function. So you have no excuse not to have an amazing space to cook in. Steve and I had a great conversation talking about kitchen design and appliances, so let's jump in.
Because it is different from everybody. And one thing you have to...
Sorry, man. I gotta interrupt you. I gotta put my jacket on.
Did you do that for me?
I just did this for you, man. Isn't this something?
You're upstaging me, man. This is like, I gotta get back to... All right, it's on.
The very first thing that every kitchen absolutely needs that has to do with function is workflow and work zones. You need your kitchen to work in such a way that it's functional, that it works for you. If you're not going to do this, then you're going to what I describe to be a beautiful mess. It's aesthetically beautiful. You can have all the beautiful appliances, but if your kitchen isn't designed and laid out in a particular way that works for the way you use the space, you're going to find yourself in trouble. And there's nothing worse than spending thousands and thousands of dollars getting into your brand new kitchen and realizing there's something off about this. It doesn't work well. For instance, you have a zone of cleaning. You have a trash, you have a sink, you have a dishwasher. These things work in tandem together, and the way they're designed with each other is important in your kitchen. You also have your prep zone, which is your countertop space. It's your range. It could be your trash as well. You also have your refrigerator and microwave, which I think about as a zone because you take something out of the refrigerator and you want to microwave it. You have just your social zone where you eat, where family might gather, drink a coffee. You have small appliance zones. You have all of these different areas in your kitchen that have to work well together and then work well with the rest of the zones in your space. And if you can, with your designer, work through exactly how this looks for your kitchen in your space and get them pinned down exactly right, your kitchen, it will be way more functional than probably most people's kitchens on your block because you were intentional in the design phase to include these areas. They're absolutely important. They need to be included in every kitchen, and it'll make your kitchen very, very functional.
I think you're totally right. You need to be intentional about design. Appliances need to fit into that design. You have so many appliance choices. You almost have to go to your appliance store and then you go to your designer, and both have to be matched in order for you to have the kitchen that's good for you. At the same time, if we're talking about a smaller space, you're going to have the ability to compromise as well.
When I talk to clients, one of the things I always ask them, what about your old kitchen or your current kitchen really does work for you? And make sure that you make note of those things and speak to your designer about those things so that you can, 1, at least bring those items into your new kitchen, or 2, enhance those features in your new space when you're designing it or building a new home. For the clients that I talk to and that I tell to do this, that actually do it and come back to me, they always say that was a really good advice to look at my old space because I didn't realize that the way that this cabinet was mounted or the height of such and such or where my mixer was really important in the way that I use the space.
I would agree in the extreme. A lot of people will, at least on my side, and I'm sure you get it on yours to extreme, is they'll look at these magazines and pick appliances based on what they see in magazines without understanding what it is, is that good for you? For example, is a dual fuel range good for you? Well, it is if you bake, it's not if you broil. So really what you're saying is in the macro is look at your kitchen for the way you use it, not from the beautiful pictures on House or, Metropolitan Design or any of the magazines that you see.
The last thing that you need in terms of design elements is efficiency. One of the ways that you can do this is super simple. It's adding as many drawers as possible with the idea that if you're not sure what a particular cabinet is going to be used for, a drawer bank is a good alternative because it covers most bases in terms of usage or storage or accessibility. When you're going with a wide drawer, I really think having a 3-drawer bank is the most optimal. And when you're going with something that's narrower, 4 drawers seems to be a little more optimal in terms of what you can store in there, in terms of organization, in terms of access. But when in doubt, drawer banks are definitely the way to go to make your kitchen efficient and easy to use.
And I guess that's the key to what we're talking about here is personalization based on the way you use a kitchen. I just think it's smart spending the time figuring out how you use this stuff so you can enjoy the stuff you use. Really,
There is one more thing I think overarcs all of these things. Most kitchens are cluttered and unorganized. And if you can do that one thing by decluttering your kitchen, organizing your space, you will solve a lot of the problems that you have in your kitchen. You're going to gain storage, you're going to gain countertop space, you'll probably gain efficiency, you'll probably discover that you can store things in different ways in different places. You don't have enough space because you have too much stuff. You have 3 sandwich makers that you got at your wedding. You don't need those.
well, if you keep moving like I have over the last 2 years, you're going to be minimalist.
Yeah,
I mean, the things.
by necessity.
Yeah, really. You almost have to put in a calendar and just do when the calendar invite comes up, because this stuff is like weeds. It just creeps up. One day you find out, well, I haven't used that Ninja blender in about 2 years. I probably don't need it. I think a lot of people really have problems with kitchen design. They're handed with a blank slate, and it's overwhelming. People are told to buy appliances first. A guy like Mark will say, well, I can't plan it without appliances. So they come to us. Really, where the synapse is, and I've come to realize it is, there's one place that I think everybody at place should start. And this has come as a shock because I'm an appliance guy. I've done this all my life. But I think you should start at your sink. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. Is A, you start at your sink. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I like to entertain. They want cooking on the island. Well, if you're going to do that, you got to be prepared to vent. And most vents that are sold in appliance stores will not vent the high output products that people are putting on their islands. If you put your sink on an island, you don't have to worry about vent. You can also put much nicer lighting in. If you're putting a sink in, you can really make, I think, a presentation a lot nicer and not worrying about how you vent, which has become more crucial, especially with the gas. Gas. It turns out that whenever you cook, you're releasing really nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, a bunch of things that comes from the cooking process. All that stuff stays in your house longer, and it is becoming kind of an issue. So start with the sink. It centralizes everything, and you're at the sink the most anyway. That's where I think you should start. Once you do that, and you talk about all the other things you talk about, things become a lot more simple. What do you think?
It's the most obvious. It dictates the rest of the design. So I do actually start with the sink when I start to lay out a kitchen. Not only the sink, but be intentional about the sink cabinet. What's underneath there? How it's plumbed? What are you doing with that space? Because it can become one of the most cluttered messes of a kitchen that you could ever see. And there's ways around that. So start with your sink and then think about what's below that and how you're using that sink base, and you're off to a great start.
You bring up a good point. I've got like 65 things underneath my sink base as we now talk, which goes into that cluttering comment you said earlier. The next big decision you have for me is stove versus wall oven and cooktop. If you get those two right, your kitchen's going to get right, along with all the other things that Mark said. Now, the difference is when you have a stove, better in smaller areas, you can centralize your cooking. When you talk about wall oven, you're not bending as much. It's much more ergometric not to bend. As I get firmly in my senior years here, bending for range becomes less and less desirable versus not bending for wall. You can also personalize your cooking a little better with a wall oven. You can maybe put a steam oven over it. You can put a microwave over it. You could do warming drawers underneath it. You get more options in that same cabinet. If we're talking about the same space. Centralizing, but you have fewer options in that range. Like if you wanted to put a steam oven in that range, you'd have to go to a 48 or 60 inch. Do you really want to bend, or do you really want to centralize? Those two, if you get that right, the rest of the kitchen you can't really get wrong, in my opinion.
Put a wall oven in. Like that's one of the really big questions that clients have. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It does depend on the kitchen size. I mean, it does take up that extra room. I love wall ovens for that reason. You don't have to bend over as much. Getting to your landing space is easier. If you can fit a wall oven in, I'd say go for it.
The last one is accessorizing. You've got 4 items, appliances. Like if you're getting like a small galley kitchen, you're going to have a dishwasher, you're going to have a range of some sort, you're going to have a refrigerator, and you're going to have a hood. Now you have accessory choices you need to make. We go from a simple refrigerator now. Do you want a counter depth refrigerator? Are you going to get a pro counter depth refrigerator? Are you going to get an integrated so it's seamless to Mark's cabinets? But if you're into refrigeration, do you get a separate beverage center Do you get a separate wine unit that can take care of your wine a little bit better? Do you want an ice make if you make different ice? Now you have all sorts of refrigerators that make different cubes, for example. So now you have your stove. Do you do a range? Do you do the wall oven or everything else? You've got a bigger kitchen. Do you do a steam oven, which I happen to love, by the way? Do you get the separate speed oven, which is a combination convection, microwave, or do you just get a regular microwave or a microwave drawer and a warming drawer underneath? We talk about ventilation. People typically buy a stainless steel hood. We talk about over-the-range microwaves, which you shouldn't buy. It's kind of a throw in the kitchen package, and they've actually made them worse. Now, there's a bunch that are now seeing they're 12 inches to match your cabinet, so they even vent worse than they did before when it was bad. So they've taken out the capture area. Do you buy something a little bit more elegant? Do you take Mark's cabinets and put it over a blower? For dishwashers, really, I mean, do you get two in a kosher type kitchen? Do you get drawers? Do you get a single one for your pantry? And again, that's really how you, along with all the things that Mark say, personalize your kitchen based on what it is you use.
Huge thanks to Steve and his team at Yale Appliance for making this video possible. I would love for you to check out the video we did on their channel here, and make sure you subscribe to them while you're there. And if you live near one of their locations, be sure to go and see them for your appliance needs. I hear they have fresh baked cookies.